Hey there, it's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
You're watching Facebook Live or YouTube Live. There on the screen is Keith Townsend. He is the regional director for Eastern Europe or Russia and the former Soviet republics. ICM, we love those guys. You can get ahead of us while we're doing the interview. Go to your website at icm.org. We're specifically talking about Ukraine. Keith, how are you?
I'm good today. How about you guys?
Doing
We're
well.
great. Yeah. Thank you for catching. We know you're busy with well, you're busy anyway, but with this invasion, I'm sure things are amped up for you guys. Fortunately, you're blessed. You have all kinds of connections on the ground everywhere around the world. So when things like this happens, the church can step out and take care of the folks that need help, and that's what we want to talk about today. Let's talk a little bit about the Ukrainians, the Russian invasion. We watch it every day. We hear about it. We read about it. What do you know about what's going on that maybe we don't know?
Well, first of all, we we try not to get engaged into politics. Obviously, that's not our line of work. We know that there's been terrible tragedy and suffering. That's been going on since they were invaded, and we know that the churches and all types of international ministries have responded in a very wonderful way. We also know that it's greatly affected the countries around Ukraine, and anybody watching the news knows the numbers. There are upwards of 2 million refugees now streaming into the other countries, and the governments and the churches are doing everything they can to respond to this humanitarian crisis. So that's what we're trying to do. We don't normally do humanitarian aid. It's not in our cup of tea normally because we have a different focus, and we try to keep the river in the riverbanks of what we do. But we had so many donors and so many people in the field crying out for help and wanting to help that we decided we had to get involved directly. So we're channeling money from our donors and people interested through our international partners that are located in those surrounding countries and in Ukraine to do the humanitarian aid relief.
Now, tell us, Keith, let's take a step back. And for those who don't know anything about ICM or don't know much about them, tell us about ICM and what you guys do on a normal basis.
Certainly. Started about 35 years ago, and it was primarily started to build church buildings around the world for people that need it. There's lots of evangelism that goes on in the world. There's a lot of evangelistic ministries. And our founder, who was a businessman, decided he saw a great need for help, that once these churches were started, they needed a building. So began in India, and then 35 years later, there's over 10,000 church buildings that we've been able to invest in. And about 15 years ago, at the prompting of one of our partners, we began building Hope Centers that are managed by the churches. So the Hope Centers do what they say. They provide meals for children. They take in children and families that are in crisis. They have an after-school program, help the kids with the homework, feed them, make sure they have clothes and medical care. And so really two parts to what we do. And then the third part, we have an evangelistic discipleship curriculum that covers Genesis to Revelation in 180 lessons that we provide them in their language for discipleship if they need it. So trying to help them grow, help them nurture in their faith, and then they can go and plant other churches and move forward with the kingdom. We don't have staff in other countries. We don't claim to be the experts in other countries. We work with in-country ministries, some very substantial, some very small, and through them and through their guidance, work as a partner with them to get these buildings built and take care of these children and so forth.
Keith Townsend, ICM Regional Director for Eastern Europe, Russia, and the former Soviet republics. We're talking about the helping the Ukrainians to over 2 million refugees, and it continues to grow. So as we watch television, as we read, we see that folks are taking care. Of course, there's a lot of children. There's a lot of ladies that are refugees. they're being fed and housed and tented and just whatever, folks can find. Did they know that something like this, were they kind of prepared ahead of time, your connections there in the other place? I mean, nobody can say, hey, the invasion is going to be in about 10 minutes. So, let's get this together. Did they smell this coming and go ahead and start moving in that direction? Or where were they in the whole scheme of things?
Well, Ukraine was preparing militarily and for siege in some of the cities, but the outlying countries were not preparing for this type of a crisis. Most people, all of our partners in Russia and that part of the world, in Ukraine, they really didn't think Putin would pull the trigger and do it.
Yeah.
It was threatening. So it caught all these countries by surprise. And some people had left as he built his army around their edges. If they had, neighboring families in other parts of that area, but most people really didn't think he would do it.
Now, Keith, for those who are watching, and we've had lots of calls from people saying, how can we help? We want to do something for the Ukraine. How can folks help? What do you need from them? Is it food? Is it money? Is it what kind of things do you guys need?
Great. We were contacted we have a substantial partner that's headquartered just outside of Frankfurt, Germany, called Bible Mission Global. And we build about 50 projects with them a year. In all of those countries, in Russia and the former Soviet countries and the part of the Soviet bloc. So they have offices in Moscow. They have offices in Kyiv, Ukraine. They've got offices in Moldova, and they've got offices and staff in Romania. So they contacted us immediately, and they said, we're going to begin doing food relief, and we can take it into Ukraine. And they have this wonderful network of churches and hope centers that we partnered with them to build over the years, and all those in the central part of Ukraine and in Western Ukraine, the churches opened up their doors and they became places for people to sleep. It took the chairs and the pews out, and same in the hope centers. And they took these refugees in, one temporarily as they're moving west or south, and then two, some people didn't want to leave the country or couldn't leave the country, so they're actually being housed in the churches, housed in the hope centers, and they began trucking in food and supplies and medicines as soon as the crisis started. Within 3 days, they had their first truck on the ground. So their director of the office in Kyiv is supervising that operation in Ukraine, in Western Ukraine. They've got trucks going in from Romania into central Ukraine and out of Moldova into the Odessa area, where it is about to be in conflict, I think. So people at this point, people can donate funds, and they've got the capacity to deliver trucks of all different sizes into those areas. And they've got warehouses set up in Ukraine, and they've got a warehouse set up in Moldova and Romania. So it's a question logistically now of finding the food and finding the funds to continue the food. Their biggest concern beyond the immediate crisis is that it may turn into a long-term crisis.
Yeah.
And so they may have these refugees for months.
Yeah.
And then people whose homes are destroyed, what do they go back to? So this network of partners that we have that are already working in these countries, that already have these facilities, God provided a wonderful conduit for these buildings and these relationships to take care of these people.
Dan and I had a conversation, I think it was yesterday or the day before off the air, and I said, there's no way to predict how long this thing is, but I thought with as many refugees that were going out, let's say everything stopped tomorrow, it would be a huge undertaking to come back and take care of them as well. And he said, well, from all indications, this may be a while. So we're so glad that you have the connections and you do what you do, and not only taking care of them physically, but with the ministries on the ground, they need prayer, no doubt, and counsel and ministered to spiritually, and no doubt that even mentally. That's just a very stressful time. I've seen so many stories with young mothers. They're gone and their husbands are fighting. So they're worried, they're crying, the kids are upset. So we're so glad that you guys are there. And Taylor, your daughter says, "Love you, Dad," there. If you'll see that on screen. There you go. See, that's what it's all about right there.
That's right.
There
Taylor,
you
thanks
go.
for being supportive.
Thank you, Taylor. That is awesome. Keith, we'd love to catch up with you. We got to get to a break here in just a bit, but we'd love to catch up with you in a few weeks, maybe, if you're up for it. We'll see where we are. But we want folks to help. ICM.org/Ukraine. That is a great place to go to, as Keith mentioned. They are responding and have responded. They're taking care of their physical needs, food and shelter, and ministering to them as well. But blessings to you guys. Keith, we appreciate you. We got to take a break. We will be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.